if a person didn't have cookies and I'd now given them cookies, are you reminding them that they now have cookies that they didn't have before? Like, they have cookies. I know you want oatmeal cookies now. You want gluten-free cookies, but you have cookies. How would your world be if I took the cookies away again?
Exactly.
Welcome back, everybody, to this week's Sales Strategy Enablement Podcast. I'm Alastair, CSRO here at Revenue.io, and I'm thrilled to have back with me Kris Rudeegraap, the CEO of Sendoso. Kris, welcome back.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
And we had such an exciting conversation last time around top of the funnel, enablement, multi-channel buying, and how gifting and engagement and the buying groups grow and all of that. But one of the key things that we didn't get time to get to, which I'm thrilled to have you back and dive in deeper on, is what about after the sale?
Yeah.
And we always worry about the front of the sale, but we never worry about after the sale. I'd love to dive in there this week with you and just get your thoughts on that, especially as companies, 80% of their growth is going to come from customers you have.
Yeah.
And we always pour all the money into that. And even in a recent Forbes article, just on a newswire that came out, they reported that despite the rising costs, 68% of marketers surveyed report the direct mail budget allocation has either increased or stayed steady year over year. And that's surprising to me when they sit there and I think they're only thinking the top of the funnel. They're not thinking of marketing. How do I apply this after that?
Mm-hmm.
How do I go drive expansion, cross-sell, upsell? And I think it's a big missed opportunity in the market right now. What's your thoughts?
I 100% agree. I think for a while, demand gen was just highly focused on that top of funnel, building pipeline, building MQLs. And, there's a bit of a resurgence on marketing teams thinking about how do they focus post funnel. I think even with ABM, as part of ABM, there's an expand part of ABM, but I think that's overlooked a lot of times for the build your target lists, engage your target prospects, when you should be running ABM to your existing customers too. So I definitely agree that I think it's been overlooked, but in maybe this recent year at least, it's getting more and more awareness.
Now, so ABM is interesting. So account-based marketing is what we're talking about for those that aren't familiar with the term. ABM can take on many forms, right? You can often see it in a one-to-many, all the way down to a one-to-one. You can see it by verticals, all of those things. And I agree. I think it's a process that is very important to continue after the sale.
Yes, exactly.
Because the words I like to use, you sold somebody in most cases on solving a problem. Hopefully you did, at least, right?
Yeah.
Now we went and sold it, and they're off and running. We hand it off to implementation. We hand off to support, and they're doing their thing. Customer success maybe follows up with the customer once a week or has drop-ins and stuff like that. But correlating back to say, are you realizing the value out of what we bought? Are you realizing value against the problem you bought us for? And value realization in ABM is one of the, that's a huge opportunity, right? Because now I can market and go to those accounts and say, look, your competitors are getting this value. We want to make sure you are getting the intended value you did out of this account. CS teams should be using data to make sure value is being driven out of that. And even then, I think of once you've done that basic foundation, and I'm going to use Sendoso as an example here, cross-selling, not just upselling, cross-selling into a new division requires us to create exposure into those accounts.
Exactly.
So now I have data and it shows me they realize value. How do I get access? How do I push on that piece? And I think the access piece is really important here.
And for, a lot of customers, there's a world where, there's an employee, your champion leaves, you've got to almost resell the account or resell the value. And so again, some of the same top of funnel sales tactics of grabbing attention, understanding problem pain points and getting that value across needs to be reinstilled in some, customer success and account management teams as they are refinding new champions or cross-selling to new champions. And so that's, ties into where, we at our customers use gifting as part of that. Yeah. How do you reestablish new champions, or how do you expand into other champions, or how do you celebrate and incentivize product usage, referrals, community? A lot of those things like are interesting topics too.
So on that, my head goes to, I think of pharmaceutical sales. The pharma industry has perfected account transitions and movement of reps better than almost any industry, right? And they, for years, long before all of the digital, have always been very good about literally gifting to the doctor, especially in America, to drive a commercial change, to drive a rep change and support that. Saying, hey, look, here's so-and-so this new, I come bearing gifts, right? Or the old adage, they'd never show up to a meeting without something for the recipient in some way. Now, tech, financial services, and other industries, I get a bit of a laggard on that front, right? Gifting has tended to be just, as we discussed last episode, top of the funnel. It's never really been thought in terms of relationship transitioning, personalization in that way, and the enablement piece of driving access. How do you think about that? Are the pharma people doing it right? Should we be doing more of that? And how do we justify both the expense? How do we justify the kind of more heavy manual process there? Is it worth it, or do we just keep charging ahead with, we'll send an email, introduce somebody, and jump on the Zoom?
Yeah, I think pharma nailed it. And I think you've got to build rapport. And I think for the last few decades, a lot of tech, financial services, et cetera, really relied on email as the sole communication channel and as the sole way to build rapport through email. But I think we've seen time and time again that channel is becoming more and more inundated with emails. And so you've got to diversify a bit. You've got to be creative and use other channels. And that's where, building rapport through gifting and through offline and through in-person really adds additional layer of value.
Yeah, and I think you're right. The email piece of it is just waning in success, right? All of the numbers are down on that. They continue to drop down. And well, Kris, I'll put you on the spot and I'll give you my answer first.
Yeah.
I use several hundred emails a day. I delete 90% of them. And even for that, even if you can get to me, I have a marketing email that people actually go into. And then I got my primary one, that people that I actually want to connect with.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of, I think, especially senior buyers have that kind of setup as well, because they just can't deal with the noise. So you have to figure out how to get to these people without the idea that I'm just going to email to them. And I know an ABM expert say, yes, but that's multi-channel. Agree, it's multi-channel. We want to hit up to 5-6 different channels.
Yeah.
But at some point, you need to create a condition for me to engage. And that's the physical pieces making that resurgence. I think that's in person. I think there's a bunch of those other pieces. And you got to figure out how to light up that channel more than we've ever done before. And I think that's more expensive. So that's where you got to be selective.
And I think it's at the right moments too. So going back to the, post-sales cycle, if you're sending a customer welcome kit, you're building rapport from day one, or if somebody just added their 100th user to your platform and you send them something as a thank you, you're kind of building that habit, or you're building that muscle memory that, they're incentivized to do stuff and they are rewarded and they're excited and willing to share that, or they're taking action in your community and you want to reward those actions. Or even for a salesperson listening who they sign up a customer, that customer's likely, got a maybe, 18 months to, maybe 36 months tenure at that company, and then maybe move on to another company, is going to be a buyer again. How do you, send something a year in, or as a salesperson, remember that's their birthday and a life moment, and send them something just to keep that relationship alive? And so I think that's also really critical, is how do you keep relationships alive for long periods of time post-sales?
100%. And there is, if Howard can join us, David, to show coming out of the world of psychology, which when we're very big into the psychological methods of driving engagement and supporting buyers. And one of the things that I think people often don't do well, and again, we're talking post-sale here, is what's called the endowed progress effect. So the endowed progress effect, for everybody to be aware, is the psychological technique where people are more likely to complete a process if they believe they've already made some progress towards the goal. And it stems from the idea that how do you drive artificial advancement towards the goal, or at least recognition of the goal? So now think I maybe transitioned an account, or I'm 1 year into a 2-year contract. And wouldn't it be great to go engage with more buyers in that buying group? Because you probably had your CS team kind of just running along.
Yep.
They're probably at the ops level, working with the day-to-day practitioners. And, we probably haven't had enough senior engagement that we need to start to set the stage for the renewal process and everything else needs to happen. So we're 50% of the way through. Using the endowed progress effect, what I can do is I can actually reach out to that person and I can tie back value realization we spoke of and say, you are this percentage towards the goal you bought our platform for, or you bought our service for.
Yeah.
Here is a thank you to say we're 50% of the way there. I'd love to also now meet and map out how we're going to get to the rest of that goal and achieve the other 50% mark.
Exactly.
That's a very interesting way to use a gift to open the door, but if you've tied in context using the endowed progress effect to create the condition to go, well, of course I want to achieve the other 50% of the goal. So what ideas do you have, Kris? Let's meet.
Exactly. You nailed it. That's a perfect use case.
Yeah. And I think it's the extra step that people need to take, as I think of the sales strategy and the enablement side of, before we just send and think that a Yeti mug is going to do it. It's the context behind that, right? Like, sure, everybody loves to get a Yeti mug, I suppose, but sorry, I'm picking on Yeti, but it's the context that goes with these things. Or another great one I love is loss aversion. So loss aversion is Tversky and Kahneman, where the psychologists came out of this, which is where you help people feel the pain of losing something more intensely than the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. So again, in a post-sale, we're always focused on more value, more value, more value. And you get a lot of feature requests. And I deal with this in our company. And often I'm like, but hold on. If a person didn't have cookies and I've now given them cookies, are you reminding them that they now have cookies that they didn't have before? Like, they have cookies. I know you want oatmeal cookies now. You want gluten-free cookies, but you have cookies. How would your world be if I took the cookies away again?
Exactly.
Right? Like that loss aversion is key. And then driving a step that says, look, this is something that is, if this happened to your company, here would be the negative impact. By the way, I am here as your representative in CS or the new AE to help ensure we do not appreciate that loss again. Now let's talk through how we can accelerate to de-risk you even further based upon what's going on in your business. Loss aversion anchored around the motivation of something that's personalized, unique to drive the conversation so it doesn't feel so salesy, and then go meet. I think it's just tactics people could use really well.
I think that's perfect. And one of the things you mentioned earlier that I want to bring back up is like there is cost. Can be expensive. But because of that, there's a scarcity, and you're not going to get 1,000 Yeti mugs sent to you because that's impossibly expensive. And so there's more of a selection process, a selection criteria of who gets sent what. And because of that, it preserves the channel and it preserves the kind of scarcity effect. So you're not just going to get 1 million Yeti mugs as like you are going to get 1 million emails. And so that even further drives kind of the effectiveness.
Yeah. Scarcity's tried and tested true. It works really well. 100% there. So post-sale side of this, Kris, what are you seeing that's working exceptionally well? And have you seen any data where you've seen it's resulting in so much more sales or better retention? Like, have you seen anything there that we could point to for our listeners?
We've definitely seen supporting data as it relates to kind of a land and expand motion and breaking into new contacts or new departments and expanding sales. So similarly, you'd expect that to work if it works top of funnel for an SDR, an AM trying to break into new accounts or new teams or business units will work effectively. So I think that's a no-brainer. But we've seen it work for other parts of the customer life cycle, whether it's, graduating from onboarding and again, giving them something to feel like they're completing something, they're going to be celebrated, sending them a gift or even a little trophy at times. Like those types of things just make you feel successful and make you come back for more. We've also seen community engagement get rewarded. using it for customer advisory board meetings, cabs, user conferences, trying to drive your customers to your user conference by way of, sending them a really cool kit or gift or printed collateral. Even if you're trying to run customer webinars and educating them on, a lunch and learn for a new product release, saying, hey, here's the lunch and learn. Here's a DoorDash gift card. Come for 30 minutes, lunch on us, so you'll learn about the new product release that we just released. So some of those things are like, hey, it's at noon. I need lunch anyway. I'm kind of curious. It's just enough willingness to come in, and you could increase, attendance. So what I usually see is companies will try to figure out what are their leaky buckets or where they're trying to optimize for, and then where can they layer on, gifting as an avenue to drive better conversions or better outcomes.
Yeah. I think it's really smart. And again, as we started this call, I just remind everybody that we're very much seeing in the market over 80% of revenues coming from the cross-sell, upsell. The importance of driving that exposure is tantamount to company success right now. New customer acquisition is never being harder for a lot of companies, and people are getting better and better at personalization, which is good. And I'm happy about that. But the personalization now needs a physical touch combined with a digital touch. So when we think, 6 or 11 channels, depending on what research you're reading, is what the advice is these days. I think if you're not thinking through the physical channel, you're going to miss out as well, right? On the existing buyers. Now, budget, we've hit on a couple times.
Yeah.
Look, we established the enablement budget's up. Okay, so that's good. So we should be thinking of that budget. Marketing's holding pretty flat. So maybe not as much coming there. And I would suggest a lot of this often has come from that area. But now let's just talk the sales leader, because I think for some sales leaders, like, I'm not really sure. Yeah, fine, send somebody something. But they're not really thinking this is the strategies we've said, the psychological techniques, the timing by sales stage. Like you should have, I would tell our listeners, you Salesforce Dynamics, I don't care which CRM you're using, you should have triggers in certain stages that are saying this is an action that needs to happen in this channel.
Yes, exactly. Or as a step in an outreach or, sequence.
100%.
Yeah. And so you can rinse and repeat it. You can report on it.
Yeah.
And you can track, maybe test.
For CS leaders, same thing. They're also living in the CRM system. You need a task in the CRM system that ties to account change activities, or you're tying to loss aversion techniques, or you're halfway through the contract cycle, and you need to have something more than just, hey, let's go out and do the dinner, right? Or let's go do something like that. Like this is a way of engaging to drive the cross-sell, upsell. The question comes out, how am I going to pay for all of this? Because physical is more expensive. We all know that.
Yep.
And I'm going to be mildly provocative here, and I'm going to tie this into our trivia question, Kris. Okay, to answer our budget question. The bottom third of sales teams are responsible for how much of a company's total sales on average. Okay, so the bottom third of a sales team is responsible for how much of the total sales generated by that company on average. A, 4%, B, 9%, C, 17+%.
I'm going to go 9%.
Good guess. Unfortunately, it's 4% is the statistical average.
Wow.
4%. So we're talking a third. So you got 100 sellers, your bottom 33 are only generating 4% of what the company needs. And I will tell you from Gartner, we always saw like the bottom third, the odds of a third becoming a top performer is very unlikely.
Yeah.
Getting to the 50 percentile, 50 to 80 range, yeah, you can coach and train and improve something there, but there's still in a less than optimum return rate. So now we're talking, we've established growth out of existing businesses are key. We know we need to drive the cross-sell, upsell. Physical is expensive. I know it's hard for people to hear, but you have to look at the expense of that bottom third. I'm not suggesting get rid of it all, but you do have to look at that and say, in my scenario of 100 sellers in a company, 33 for the price of 10, which is going to be fully burdened close to, call it $3.5 million pretty easily. Could we not move mountains and cross-sell, upsell in that scenario in a big way? I think we can. I think it requires a little bit of rethink of budget allocation as opposed to this solely coming from the world of marketing.
I 100% agree. And I think there's other kind of budgets that could be overlooked and reallocated better, such as, are your digital ads performing as good as they should, or should you test that in other channels? Or is your T&E budget as effective, or can that be better used? So I think aside from, pulling from like a headcount budget, there's other program spend or even other ancillary buckets of spend that can be a no-brainer to pull from and show better results at the end of the day, thus driving better revenue.
Great advice. Kris, unfortunately, I'm out of time for this week, but it's been a pleasure having you on. Your insights around the world of physical as a channel to drive buyer engagement, I hope helps our listeners come up with some new ideas here going forward. So thank you so much for sharing the insights here. Like last time, I want to finish with a favorite moment, a moment you'd love to redo, something that is embarrassing or fun. I don't mind. And last time you had, for me at least, a heartwarming one of starting Sendoso was a huge thing. You actually wish you would have done it sooner and things like that. And I think, the entrepreneur in all of us is, let's go for it. But I'm going to ask you for one more moment. What's a moment that you'd love to talk about?
Yeah. So I think meeting my wife, she's been super supportive in my entrepreneur journey. So back to my last answer, I couldn't have done it without her. I know that a lot of CEOs take credit, founders take credit themselves, but I have to say my wife is equally impactful on where I've been and where I'm going, and has been kind of the behind the scenes helper in a lot of my decisions. So meeting her is one of those moments that I cherish forever.
Well, I think you're hopefully get a big hug for that one. What's your wife's name?
My wife's name is Andrea.
Andrea. Well, and shout out to Andrea as well. Thank you for helping, Andrea and Kris. You sound like a dynamic duo. You're building an awesome company. Keep at it. Thank you for everything you're doing on that side, the insights here with everyone. And for our listeners, please remember to like and subscribe. Send your questions in to Howard and I. We will do our best to answer them on a future podcast episode. And thanks again for joining us here today. Kris, CEO of Sendoso, thank you.
Thank you so much. See you later.